Coming up on Naperville News 17, City Council votes to ban the sale of commercially bred dogs and cats. An aerial workout could be on its way to Naperville, and a show of support for a vet's treatment milestone. Hello everyone, I'm Kim Pierce. Thanks for joining us for this week's Naperville News. Discussion on pet sales once again came to council chambers. Naperville News 17's Casey Krajewski shares what was decided.
Naperville City Council voted 5-4 to prohibit commercially bred cat and dog sales in Naperville. The dais has debated the issue since 2014 and narrowly passed the ordinance, which is commonly referred to as a humane ordinance.
We've gotten a significant amount of information that show if you pass humane ordinances, those problems will decrease. It may not be a magic bullet that's going to solve the problem overnight. There's no magic bullet that's going to solve the whole problem overnight, but it will make things better.
Currently, 2 pet stores sell commercially bred animals in Naperville, Happiness's Pets and PETLAND. Representatives from both stores spoke at the meeting and asked the dais to wait for the state to handle this issue or vote for a second option, which would institute stricter standards of care for breeders who sell to local pet stores.
We ask that you wait to see how the state addresses breeder standards as they did previously with legislation changing pet store sourcing standards in 2017 and pet store warranties in 2014.
Some on the dais, though, felt Naperville should be leaders on this issue, and the overwhelming support from the public and industry experts couldn't be ignored.
Much of the testimony received asked Naperville to be leaders. We were told by a state representative who now controls Springfield that they cannot act to protect our residents from emotional and financial loss caused by puppy mill sales and the harm to the animals themselves.
GUSTIN and KELLI were joined by Teresa Sullivan, Judy Broadhead, and Paul Hinterlong in voting for the humane ordinance. Benny White, Mayor Steve CHIRICO, Kevin Coyne, and John Crumman voted against the ordinance. CHIRICO and Coyne said the ordinance might push sales to the internet, where regulation is even more difficult.
I think it's pretty clear from the example in Chicago that it has not worked very well. I think it's been a big step backwards. Online sales have been a huge problem in the city because people don't have any other choice.
Pets can still be purchased in Naperville, but they must be sourced from humane and rescue groups. The pet sales ban will go into effect on January 1st, 2021. Reporting for Naperville News 17, I'm Casey Krajewski.
Naperville becomes the 11th municipality in Illinois to pass a humane ordinance. Council also unanimously approved the Special Events and Cultural Amenities Commission's 2020 allocation recommendations. The only change to the grant allocations was to award Century Walk $50,000 to fund a Fireman's Memorial Public Art Project. Councilwoman Teresa Sullivan, the council's SICA liaison, said the organization originally wasn't awarded any money, not because of their value to the community, but because their application is, by nature, very vague about what projects they can fund. Council agreed that Century Walk is a special case, and their application process may need to be changed going forward. The largest awards were allocated to the Last Fling at $172,387 and the new Naperville Salute 4th of July event at $108,411. In total, 61 organizations received funding in this year's allocation. And NCTV 17 is partially funded by a SICA grant. A new Costco is coming to Naperville, but to make room for its arrival, longtime theater Ogden 6 will have to move or close. Our own Ashley Hausa has the details.
The city of Naperville has announced that it will welcome a second Costco location in the Ogden Mall Shopping Center. The Wholesale Corporation has entered into a purchase and sale agreement with the property owner of the East Ogden Mall to construct a 159,000 square foot warehouse club facility and gas station. This means the area will be redeveloped, affecting existing businesses including Classic Cinemas Theater, Ogden 6.
If Costco does come, then we would be gone. And so we're looking for new places to go. It's a lot of effort and money to move, especially when last year we had such an amazing, we were up 56% at the box office, and this year we're up 40%. I mean, so we're kind of killing it after we put in the new seats and went to first run, and so it's a real bummer to, have to move.
The theater spent about $1.5 million on the new renovations back in August 2018. Ogden 6 has been in Naperville for over 40 years. Johnson is looking at new locations and hopes to relocate in Naperville, but it's possible a new city will be their best option. Some took to social media to express their disappointment and have started a petition called Save Ogden 6 Theater. The city understands that many are disappointed with the news, but believe this is the right move for an area that's had many vacant spots for 7 years.
When we have an opportunity to bring some life and vibrancy back into that area, we need to take that opportunity and move forward with it. And at the same time, work hard to try to preserve all of the good things that we can, the businesses that are there that we can continue to work with.
The city is working with affected businesses, including Ogden 6, to offer resources and help them relocate smoothly. The hope is to generate a higher sales tax, which in turn will help lower property taxes.
The sales tax generating revenue from one Costco is more than the entire downtown business district in Naperville all put together.
This will be the second Costco in Naperville, joining the one along Route 59. Reporting for Naperville News 17, I'm Ashley Hausa.
The city hopes the addition of Costco will spur further development in that East Ogden corridor. After the break, a request to the Liquor Commission gets the axe.
Naperville Crime Stoppers.
Yes, I'd like to report some suspicious activity in my neighborhood. How does this work?
Yes, thanks for calling. Your call is anonymous, and I will not ask for your name. Instead, you'll be identified by tip number. In a few weeks, call back with the tip number you received, and I will let you know the status of your tip. If an arrest is made, you could receive a reward up to $1,000.
How do I get the reward money if you don't know who I am?
Well, when you call back, we set up a time and a place to drop the money. You will be safe, and nobody will know you gave Crime Stoppers a tip.
Okay, well, here's what's going on.
There may soon be a new gym you can hang out at in Naperville. Naperville News 17's Christian Canizal tells us more about it.
At the latest Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, the group approved Aerial Fitness, a boutique gym that incorporates hammocks as part of some of their workouts. The unique aspect of using the hammock during the workout allows a person to use their body weight for resistance in the high-intensity interval training.
So AIR is a franchise, and it's a completely different concept than some of the other concepts in the area. You do get that suspension in midair, you get the decompression of the spine along with a full body workout in 50 minutes.
AIR does offer beginner classes for those not yet acquainted with being, well, no pun intended, in the air. The location of the boutique gym would be 236 South Washington Street, but it's not visible from the street and gets little pedestrian traffic, which is why P&Z commissioners approved a zoning variance that would allow for the gym to occupy the space typically designated for retail businesses.
Retail uses have historically struggled at this tenant space, and the property owner has trouble attracting viable tenants long term.
Neighbors of the location behind me said there's been an abundance of businesses in and out of those doors these past several years. This past year alone, a bridal shop and an art gallery shut down. The art gallery was only open for 2 months.
The lack of foot traffic and no roads, plus an alleyway primarily used for unloading cargo, have been a problem for the space. But commissioners and LANGUS feel the gym could be the right ad for the challenging spot.
Well, our business is very destination based, and I think that's why this location is truly a great fit for both, both the owners of the space and for us, because the parking is just so convenient. And literally every other space that we looked at in downtown Naperville was going to be a challenge in that regard.
Aerial Fitness will now go to City Council for final consideration. For Naperville News 17, I'm Christian.
If approved by City Council, this will be the 4th location of an aerial fitness in Illinois and the first one outside of Chicago. Congratulations are in order for Naperville's Edward Hospital. The local healthcare provider has been awarded 5 stars in the latest Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services overall hospital quality star ratings. Elmhurst Hospital, also in the Edward Elmhurst Health System, got the same 5-star rating. The two were among just 21 hospitals in Illinois to achieve this distinction. Some factors taken into consideration for the rating are mortality, readmissions, timeliness of care, and patient experience. Both hospitals also earned an A grade in the Leapfrog Group's Fall 2019 Hospital Safety Grades. It was an eventful meeting for the Naperville Liquor Commission. Our own Casey Krajewski tells us what was discussed.
Crowlers and axes highlighted the most recent Naperville Liquor Commission meeting. Red Arrow Tap Room requested allowing Class B licenses the ability to sell crowlers, 32-ounce cans used to package craft beer or cider. The commission asked Detective Dan Riggs the police department's opinion.
They were fine with the idea of the crowler. They did have some questions about how they were sealed, though. As I understand, the crowler that we're referring to right now has a screw-off lid, similar to like the Monster drinks or whatever. It's actually, they call it a resealable crowler, where you can take it off and put the lid back on.
Riggs said the NPD would be more comfortable with a can that couldn't be resealed. City staff said one other business besides Red Arrow had shown some interest. The commission voted 6-1 to recommend approving Red Arrow's request, but will limit the downtown businesses using them to no more than 3. That recommendation will go to City Council for final approval. The commission also discussed Axe Zone Throwing Lounge's request for a Class M liquor license. Axe Zone owner Mohsen Ali said he would limit patrons to 2 beers each or a bottle of wine per group. But several commissioners expressed concerns that axes and liquor would be a dangerous combination, including Commissioners Karen Charvat and Anthony Signorella, who were sworn in earlier in the meeting.
Being sworn in today, coming up here and hearing alcohol drinking and axe throwing together in the same facility, I have my reservations on that.
Commissioner Kim White also pointed out that Axe Zone's website advertises bring in your own food and beverages, and that the company's Yelp page displayed images of people drinking what appeared to be beer. Ali said there was some confusion among the staff on whether this location was BYOB, as another Axe Zone he owns is, but that the issue had been taken care of. The commission voted unanimously against Axe Zone's request. That will also go to City Council. For Naperville News 17, I'm Casey Krajewski.
The commission also approved a request by Topgolf to allow vendors to do sample tastings at their facility. Coming up, local students get a chance to see democracy in action.
You work hard, and you want to see your efforts pay off, literally. Whether you're dreaming of retirement, growing your business, or leaving a legacy for future generations, at Busey, we help you realize the possibilities of tomorrow. We listen to your needs and goals to create a sound strategy for you and your family. Enjoy the achievements of your life and work. We'll handle the rest. Busey, your dream, our promise.
We're proud to call Naperville our hometown, where you can enjoy simple pleasures, such as a stroll along the Riverwalk or the excitement of a Friday night football game. It's where families can raise their children and plant their roots for generations to come. And so we're proud to be the city's nonprofit television station, keeping residents connected and informed through video storytelling on air and online. We ask that you continue to watch and share the stories about this wonderful town we call home.
The city's comprehensive master plan is now being called the Land Use Master Plan to better reflect the document's purpose. Naperville News 17's Casey Krajewski has more.
The city and consultant HOUSEAL LAVIGNE Associates recently hosted a public workshop to go over the most recent draft of the Land Use Master Plan.
We need to craft a flexible policy and vision for the city. And then I think hopefully tonight we did a good job in explaining the rationale for that approach.
The plan is not a strict zoning map, but rather a guide for future development. Residents shared concerns, including that all housing types were grouped into one category on the map, where previous drafts specified mixed residential and single-family homes. City officials said this was done in order to allow more flexibility for future developments that might include various housing types.
One of the main things that we heard coming out of both the original public meetings and open houses and board and commission workshop, as well as the survey, is that affordability of housing within Naperville is a top priority. Based on the housing gap that was identified, we have created one residential category in order to provide more flexibility, more opportunities to try and achieve the housing needs that we've identified in the plan.
A recent report presented to the Housing Advisory Commission by consultant S.B. Friedman said 27% of Naperville households are burdened by housing costs. The city would have to add more than 5,000 affordable apartments and houses to meet the state's recommended minimum requirements. Naperville is the largest city in Illinois that does not meet the Illinois Housing Development Authority's 10% threshold for affordable housing. Reporting for Naperville News 17, I'm Casey Krajewski.
The full land use master plan is available on the city's website, and feedback can be provided through February 17th by emailing kopinski@naperville.il.us. The District 203 School Board reviewed the first draft of a Memorandum of Understanding, or MOU, at their latest meeting. The MOU focuses on the role of school resource officers in student discipline.
This MOU between the City of Naperville and the Board of Education is intended to promote a safe, welcoming, and inclusive environment for all students, staff, and other members of our school community. This MOU will now operationalize and clarify the responsibilities of the city and the district, their roles and responsibilities of the SRO and district administrators, and the scope of their authority in the administration of the SRO program.
The proposed MOU states that the district is responsible for training SROs in district procedures and policies relevant to the SRO program. If a student under the age of 18 needs to be questioned or detained at school, the SRO needs to notify the principal first. Then the student's parents or guardian will be contacted to make sure they are there as well. If they cannot be reached, the principal and a school mental health professional, like a psychologist or social worker, must be present. Minor students cannot be taken out of school by the SRO without the consent of a parent unless there is a warrant for arrest. SROs will consult weekly with the principal, and their performance will be evaluated annually by the Naperville Police Department and school officials. Implementing a district-wide MOU has been a request from Maureen and Doug Walgren, whose son Corey died by suicide in January 2017, not long after he was questioned by school officials and an SRO at Naperville North without a parent present.
The MOU needs clear descriptions. If a dean determines legal or criminal issues are involved, then the dean should follow the new law, HB 2627, and call the parents before bringing in the SRO or outside police.
The MOU also outlines student discipline. The school is responsible for carrying out rules, policies, and procedures. An SRO can become involved if school officials feel like they need their help to protect the physical safety of students and staff. The board plans to make a final decision at the February 18th meeting. February 5th would have been Corey's 20th birthday. Students from Indian Prairie School District 204 recently went to the Iowa caucuses. Naperville News 17's Christian Canizal tells us about their experience.
One by one, students from METEA, WAUBONSIE, and Equal Valley got off a bus after spending the last several days in Iowa for the caucuses. Along with 3 teachers, 45 students from Indian Prairie School District 204 made the trip, which they said was a real eye-opener.
Before this opportunity, I didn't really know what a caucus was. Like, I remember at the beginning in our government classroom, we kind of touched on it, but I didn't know how it worked, and it seemed really chaotic. Even when I got there and throughout the night, I kept learning about a lot of the different things and how you could actually make a non-viable candidate a viable candidate.
Students spent their time in Iowa City, meeting some of the candidates and even campaigning for them.
It was, not gonna lie, really intimidating. Iowa citizens know it's caucus day. They know they're about to get a million knocks on the door. And so you just had to be as polite as possible. If you did get an answer, I was actually one of the lucky groups, and out of everyone I heard, we got the most door answers and conversations.
This is the second time students from District 204 have gone to the Iowa caucuses. The goal is for students to learn more about how politics work and to have civil conversations about them.
All the people who were interested enough to go on this trip understand
is that politics isn't a separate subject of study. It's not its own field. It's literally everything. It's important to understand that if you want to have a healthy approach to our democracy.
Though difficulties in the process prevented the students from knowing who had won before they left, they agreed it's better to get the outcome right than to rush a wrong result.
In 2012, Iowa actually made a mistake. They called the primary for Mitt Romney, and actually Rick Santorum won. So it's better they wait till 4 o'clock today or whatever it's going to be than release faulty numbers.
Young adults learning more about the democracy system to maybe one day be running it. For Naperville News 17, I'm Christian Canizal.
The trip was made possible by the MICVA Challenge Grant Foundation, Indian Prairie Educational Foundation, and the Naperville League of Women Voters. In the latest State of the Union address, President Donald Trump spoke about the recently signed United States-Mexico-Canada agreement. President Trump said the new trade agreement with Mexico and Canada will bring a much higher level and much greater degree of fairness and reciprocity between each country. The USMCA replaced the North American Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, which was enacted in 1994 to allow free trade between the U.S., Canada, and Mexico.
It had become extraordinarily outdated. Since that time, there was e-commerce that wasn't addressed in the trade agreement, and there's some other outdated factors to it. So President Trump called for early in his administration that he wanted to have it a reworking of that trade agreement to make it more current and make it more fair.
One of the companies that will benefit from the new trade agreement is SPANESI Americas, a local body shop equipment company. In conjunction with the Naperville Area Chamber of Commerce, they hosted an event last year in support of the USMCA.
Within the same day of the agreement finally being signed, we were at a major trade show in Canada. One of my distributors in Canada normally orders, say, 3 measuring systems at a time. Now he's called and wanted to order 20 at a time. So I would say it's worked out pretty well.
Morgan said without the USMCA, SPANESI Americas would still be stuck on first gear. But now things for the car company are shifting into a higher gear. Up next, a Naperville man makes his triumphant return to the ice after fearing he never would.
Being a realtor, there are so many realtors out there. People really need to know who you are. And by connecting and being on Business Connection, you really get to see a sense of who I am and how I can really help you, especially since I specialize in the Naperville area. It felt like going to Sunday dinner. It was very comforting. They said, don't worry, it's going to be like having a conversation, and it really was. Everybody, from the moment I walked in the door till I was done, just made me feel comfortable. There was no pressure. I use it as my signature line. So as a realtor, when I'm prospecting buyers or sellers, I want them to know who I am and what I'm about. And having that video on my signature really sets me apart. I have met many people at networking events, and I do recommend you have to call NCTV and get something set up.
It's seemingly business as usual for Jim Porter as he's lacing up his skates a second time, his usual pregame tradition. But underneath the referee's stripes, a scar on his neck, is a reminder to the Naperville resident that this night isn't just a regular game.
I'm ready to go. Been looking forward to this day for a long time.
In October, Porter had surgery to remove 4 deteriorating discs from his neck as the 51-year-old was suffering from spinal stenosis. His wife and kid recall what life was like during the time around Jim's surgery.
We just knew it was going to happen November 4th, but then in October, he just suddenly could not lift his arms and his spine was kind of compressing. And so they had to do an emergency, and it was a 9-hour surgery.
It was kind of scary because I never thought my dad would be able to walk again. It was like going through my mind that my dad was going to be paralyzed for the rest of his life.
But thankfully, Jim made a full recovery and was back at the Rocket Ice Skating Rink in Bolingbrook to ref his first game since the surgery. But before he could hit the ice, he received some words of encouragement from his family.
Don't fall down.
Don't break any bones.
Protect your neck.
Smiling from ear to ear, Jim was back in his element, smooth skating across the rink and doing what he loves.
Being able to be a part of the game with the kids is what I miss. Tonight, getting back on the ice, I heard some people in the crowd yelling my name, and
it felt like it was where I belonged.
Alongside Jim was his longtime friend and fellow referee, Mike Anderson, who he called asking for his help.
He's like, hey, I'm coming back. I got my first game. I got it scheduled. Would you, do me the honor and skate with me for that first game? So it was definitely an honor for me. I actually had some other games scheduled. I dropped those games and did this one with him.
The final score of this game in hindsight wasn't the most important thing that night, considering Jim didn't know a couple of months ago if he'd ever walk again.
I remember sitting in that hospital wondering if I'd ever do this again. And here I am. And it's been a long time coming, and I loved every minute of it.
As the final buzzer rang out, each team shook hands and went their separate ways. And so did Jim, skating off with his arms raised high.
I mean, I did it, right? I saw a lot of my friends, and I did it. I'm back.
You certainly are, Jim. Welcome back. For Sports Story Sunday, I'm Christian Canizal.
And if you have an idea for a sports story feature, you can let us know at newstips@nctv17.com. And finally, members of the Air Force recently came together to celebrate a veteran's milestone. Bob Anderson was in the United States Air Force from 1951 through 1952, serving in the Korean War. Recently, the 88-year-old graduated from his chemotherapy at the Northwestern Medical Proton Center, given a clean bill of health. And though he finished his Air Force service over 65 years ago, present-day Air Force members were right there to support him during his journey.
At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what branch you've served in, whether you're a soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine, you got our support. A veteran's a veteran.
Grateful to have the Air Force here, because it ties in way back to 1952 when I joined the Air Force National Guard of Minnesota. It's a special place in my heart, the Air Force.
Anderson, along with other treatment graduates, were also given a commemorative coin. The coin symbolizes their strength, with stars to represent themselves, family, friends, and support systems. And that's what's happening right here in your neighborhood, Naperville. We'll see you next week. Until then, you can catch up with local news by signing up for our NCTV 17 news update, delivered right to your inbox Monday through Friday. Sign-up information is right on our website, nctv17.com.
This week's Naperville News 17 is brought to you in part by the following sponsors. This program is partially funded by a grant from the City of Naperville.